So you got one side that says they don't work with no evidence, and then you got another side that says they do work with evidence. Hey everybody, and welcome back. Speed cameras. I can't believe we're still talking about speed cameras and how they're a tax grab and they don't work. Doug Ford, I guess, is going to be planting his flag on this hill and going to destroy his political career on this, because the consequences, if he continues on this path and it goes through, people's lives, like literally, I'm not being hyperbolic, people's lives are in danger. Okay, children's lives are in danger, because even in school areas, he's still adamant, even doesn't want to have speed cameras in school zones, because his idea of big flashy lights, signs, and other ideas he has are going to slow everybody down. You know, proactive instead of reactive is a lot of the terms he was using as well in the press conference he did in Vaughan. So this is more for people who support Doug Ford, this video, and what we're going to talk about, because everybody else who understands the consequences and what's at stake here are people's lives. It's a tool that works. There are statistics that show it works. So this idea that Doug Ford keeps repeating over and over again, like a, is it a parakeet? Yeah, that just repeating the same thing over and over again, figures that people will believe him. So just think about it for a second. If I'm coming to you with an argument and I'm telling you this calculator is the best calculator in the world, or compared to other calculators on the market, me saying that means nothing. That could be just my preference, my bias, because this is the only calculator I've ever used and I've never tried anything else. I have to come to you with data, with statistics stating, does it last longer? Does it calculate faster? How many people prefer it in the market compared to other calculators they also have used? I have to prove my point. Okay? Doug Ford has done none of that. The only thing he's done to prove his point is they're a tax grab, because I talked to two mayors, which he hasn't given a name. They haven't given a statement to say, yes, we've told Doug Ford this. And he hasn't given any statistics or data to prove his point. So why are we going down this route? If you truly believed, if Doug Ford truly believed that they don't work and they're nothing but a tax grab, bring receipts to your arguments. So in the press conference he had with three mayors, one from Kitchener, Barrie, and Vaughan, Steve DeLuca, Alex Nuttall, and Barrie, I apologize for his last name, Bogdanovic. Okay, they all gave statements. And I'm not going to show you the video. I recommend you all go take a look, okay? They were all kind of parroting the same statements that Doug Ford was saying, that they don't work. We've come to the conclusion, and we're here for the taxpayers, the community, the residents of the cities. Great. I think that's great as a mayor, as a representative. You should be there for the residents and the taxpayers. But not on this, because you're wrong. And the reason you're wrong is some of the examples, again, they weren't bringing any data, just hearsay. Like, for example, a great example is Steve DeLuca. Stephen Del Duca, okay, Mayor of Vaughan. He gave two anecdotal stories of residents of Vaughan that came to him, and one was seniors on pension, okay? Basically explained that they got a ticket and only doing a few kilometers over, a few, he emphasized a few. Again, what was the speed? If you're saying they're only doing a few kilometers over, tell me, is it show the receipt, show the data, go to the your database where these tickets were taken. It will tell you how many kilometers were over. Like when people say a few, they're thinking 3 or 4, but a few could mean from 3 or 4 and above, okay? Some people, even on the comments of my last video, think 10 kilometers over is still not speeding. So if you're doing 40, sorry, if the speed limit's 40 and you're doing 50, you're speeding. They believe 20 and over is speeding. And that assumption comes from when you're on the highway. It's posted on 100. Everybody's doing 110, 115, 120. Highway speeds are not the same as municipal road speeds. You don't have people running all over the place on the highway. Okay? That extra 10 to 15 kilometers on the highway is my personal, again, statistical data. I have none, okay? I'm telling you, this is my feelings. Statistically, it's not going to make a break in terms of an overall accident or losing control unless you're an idiot, okay? Now, road conditions, everything else, yes, make a big difference. But when you're in the municipal roads, like doing 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever, an extra 10 kilometers an hour when it comes to hitting a pedestrian makes a difference. Again, the statistics, 50 kilometers an hour, 90% chance they're not going to make it. 40 kilometers an hour, they have a 30% chance of making it. 10 kilometers an hour is a huge difference. So again, back to Del Duca. Talked about how he had said pensioners, we're on a pension. We got a ticket only a few kilometers over. Okay, all right. Seems harmless. A story, yeah, that's a pensioner, hard, especially with inflation, everything else. But when you're on pension, you're 65 plus. All due respect, you should be following the speed limit. Your reaction time has like fallen off a cliff when you get older. I'm sorry, I apologize, but your reaction, reflexes, eyesight, everything else, when you're older, especially 65 plus, no, you need to be following the speed limits. Okay. Now, again, people make mistakes, whatnots, but if you can't afford a ticket making one mistake, there are bigger problems in our society than them getting a speed ticket. Cost of living and everything else is shot through the roof, and the government should be working on that, not these stupid speed tickets. Now, he went to another example of I think it was a father working in the auto industry, and he was getting multiple of tickets because it took a while for it to come through. And there's stories all over about people complaining how they get multiple tickets in an area and they just stop driving in an area, which is great. As a resident, I wouldn't want you driving in this area if you're going over the speed limit multiple times. My point is on these stories is he's just using them as to tug at people's heart of the cost. Okay, somebody's pocketbook, I can relate and when times are tough. But I'm sorry, but if the chances of hitting someone is lower because of it, pay the fine. And people lie. Talk to any police officer when they pull somebody over. There's always an excuse of why they were speeding. And none of it makes sense. And none of it is legitimate. So the idea that he would use these examples without actually looking into it, like how fast that senior was going over the speed limit, and the gentleman who was working in the auto industry can't afford groceries, now has to pay multiple fines. There's problems there. And it's not the actual that they got caught. So also going on to Doug Ford's comments and when he started speaking and answering questions with the reporters. Kept iterating, tax grab, kept iterating that the signs, which he had a bunch behind him, and if you looked at the the news conference, I know those signs. Everybody here has seen those signs where there's a little radar gun on it. As you're passing by, it will tell you your speed limit. And when it starts flashing, you're going over the speed limit. Not a damn thing when it terms in what it does, okay? For people who actually follow the law, yes, it will slow them down. It will wake them up, which again is a problem on your own, that you should be paying attention to your speed limit wherever you are. Even if you're in an area you're not familiar with, that's still not an excuse. Well, I didn't know this area. I'm not familiar. I didn't know there was a school here. You should always be paying attention. Driving School 101. So he's telling us that those signs will work. It'll slow everybody down. I don't know how many times, again, anecdotal, I don't know how many times I've driven through those areas with those signs. Nobody has slowed down. Not one person. Well, no, I can't say that. That would be a lie. A handful of people slow down, but there are people who still said, okay, so what? I'm doing 60 and 50. Who cares? It's not fast enough, or it's not really speeding. Again, justifying 10 over. It's not really speeding. And another talks about turnarounds, which he means roundabouts. Okay, if you're not familiar with what a roundabout is, this is what a roundabout is. They don't slow down traffic on the main streets. They're designed to have the flow of traffic continue, because if you had a four-way stop, especially in an area where there's like 4 lanes, okay, this keeps the flow of traffic going, especially with compared to stop signs and stop lights. They do slow down traffic within the intersection itself, not before and not after. So I don't understand his idea that he's going to implement or give the resources to the cities for roundabouts to slow traffic down. Again, plus you can't do that in a lot of existing areas, because there's not enough space for it. It requires a lot more space for these roundabouts, especially for the flow of traffic and what they need to do. Extended curbs, okay. People slow down when things are narrowed. Yes, psychologically that works. But what happens when you're in that area and you're used to that narrow illusion of a narrow path? Your speeds start to climb because you're more confident driving through that narrow path. Again, studies will show it's temporary, slows it down, but then if you're used to it, will continue to speeds. And the people who are speeding are the ones that are very comfortable in driving. So even with these measures, he doesn't bring any statistical data to back his claims up that they are better. Again, he parrots himself, just keeps saying they work better. I'm going to slow traffic right down. Yes, I agree. You can slow traffic right down. And like I've stated before, speed bumps. Put them in. I agree. Especially in a school area, you want to be proactive instead of reactive. You don't want to nail somebody after they sped through a school zone. You want to slow them down before they do it. That's a great theory. Put speed bumps in. But you also are going to have to be careful, because there's other areas that there's like parks, recreation centers, and whatnot, and they're all over the city, all over the neighborhoods. So you're going to be putting speed bumps in almost every single residential street in every municipality. See what happens. Again, a lot of you already understand what I'm talking about. It slows traffic right down. Not just to the speed limit, but below it. And it actually causes traffic to back up. I have examples of that just around my neighborhoods. It's absolutely insane. So everybody's going to be punished for the people who are not willing to slow down and have been complaining because it hurts their pocketbooks because they haven't slowed down. So not everybody else has to suffer, not only with the suffering of reduced traffic to a crawl, but also the increased taxes that it's going to cost to implement all these changes. Now, Doug Ford does make a good point where he says, well, I've asked some of these municipalities what they've used with this money that they've generated. And okay, I agree with you. What have you used this money that you've generated to slow down traffic? And he claims they haven't done a thing with it. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that that's true. Legislate. Again, all these problems are easily solved by legislating and not having to get rid of cameras. Legislate that any money generated by the speed cameras have to go right back into traffic calming. They can't use it for regular general road repair or new roads, infrastructure, whatever, for safety of the roads and the areas of schools, parks, recreation centers. Easily legislate that. Also, for a few kilometers over, and before it was only 1 kilometer over, then it was 2 kilometers over, and now they're talking about a few kilometers. They always keep changing their stories, so you got to watch out for that. Legislate that. A reporter, 680 News, I believe, I can't remember his name, asked that question. He says, why don't you just legislate it that you cannot give a ticket using a speed camera under X amount of kilometers? You and the municipalities and your professionals of what's safe. I was doing a little research on this online, and the international standard for a lot of these speed cameras is 10% of the posted speed limit plus 2, like 2 miles per hour or 2 kilometers. So 40 kilometers an hour, 10% is 4 plus 2, that's 6 kilometers an hour. That's more than enough in terms of leeway for people who are speeding, especially 40 kilometers an hour when that's dealing with a school area. 50 kilometers an hour, 60 kilometers an hour, so that's 60 times 10, that's 6 plus 2, that's 8. So you're doing 68. At those speeds, you're at a bigger road and everything else. So that makes sense. Legislate that. You don't have to destroy the speed cameras to make your point. Fix the problem. So one other thing too I want to state, and it was like kind of a little bit of an eye-opening. I don't have any proof. It's just a gut feeling where Doug Ford, because I want to know, like, I'd like to know sometimes when someone makes an argument and they're not basing it on facts, on data, on experiences or whatnot. It's just feelings. I'm sorry, this is just Doug Ford's feelings, okay? Especially when he hasn't brought anything to the table to prove otherwise. He made a comment about Etobicoke, his hometown, or home city. And he says, they're all over the place, the speed cameras. And with those speed cameras, there's these just little signs that tell me there's a speed camera coming up. So this proves the point of his earlier accusations that there's never any warning, which proved that he was lying. Okay? Because again, side note is they always let you know you're coming up to a speed camera area. And not only that, but they post signs warning you weeks ahead that there's one coming for the area. Okay. So he says, oh, little signs. They're all, how are you going to see that? First of all, that's your problem. That's your problem. If it's hidden behind a tree, another sign, or if it's just before the speed camera and you don't have time to react, I can give you that. But none of that is true. So that tells me it's frustration. It looks like he's frustrated. But why would he be frustrated? Maybe, again, this is my assumption, and I'm just guessing here. When someone reacts like that or has statements like that, to me it seems like he's gotten a lot of speed tickets from speed cameras. And maybe he's frustrated because he believes he wasn't speeding. Maybe he believes he's not the criminal, and now he's being targeted like a criminal, and he's the big premier, and he's here for the people and everything else. So therefore, this was a mistake, and I think I'm going to get rid of it because I don't think they're doing anything with it. They're just hurting good people like myself. Assumptions here, but I tend to have I don't want to toot my own horn or whatever, but I tend to understand people sometimes with their reaction. It's just experience in my life. I've seen it all the time. So that's where I think he's coming from. And all the other mayors, Kitchener, Barrie, and Vaughan, I think it's more not that they've gotten hit with speed. I think, again, politics, they've made a deal with Doug Ford because, Mayor Barrie's having problems with encampments like every other city. But I think he's made a deal with Doug Ford. Said, listen, I'm going to support you here, but I'm going to need a little bit extra resources to deal with these encampments. Therefore, I can help my citizens. He made a deal. I'm not going to fault him on that. But what I'm going to fault him on is he made the wrong deal for the wrong policy. Because not only, yes, you're going to get money and resources for the encampments, but now you've taken the tools away for making people safe, especially in school areas. Del Duca, I believe the same thing. Infrastructure. There's a lot of things going on in Vaughan in terms of roads, bridges, because they also stated that roads and bridges. Again, little things you hear when people talk about in these news conferences. Just you got to listen sometimes to the words and the phrases they use. So I think he also made a deal with Doug Ford on that they're going to get a boost in money funding for infrastructure for that region. Again, I think it's great. You can get more money for infrastructure, which benefits his citizens and his residents. That's what you're there for, to represent people of Vaughan. However, but to make a deal on something that's also going to take away the safety of the residents of Vaughan, it's a shitty deal. So you've got to be careful and you've got to listen sometimes. And again, for the people who are supporting Doug Ford on this tax grab, they don't do anything, they don't work. And that, again, I can show you there's or let me restate that. They don't work, and also that the people don't want it. Majority of people think they're a cash grab. Well, CAA did a survey on speed cameras. 73% of responders support the use of speed cameras in school zones and community safety zones. 76% believe that cameras deter speeding. 73% reported slowing down when nearing an automated speed enforcement camera. 52% of them are unlikely to speed up again after passing one. And this one here, which is the one I like, 46% of drivers avoid roads with speed cameras altogether. That's great. That means you're unwilling to change and you want to go in an area and get caught. Again, that reduces the speeding. Okay? Because there's other ways to get around. And if you don't want to go in that area because you can't slow down and you refuse to go in that area, that's still a success. That's great. Now, do they work? Yes. Again, there's so many there's so many statistical data points out there that they explain it. Even just recently, the city of Ottawa put out their data, okay, from a year prior on the roads that they have these speed cameras. So King Edward Avenue between Bolton Street and St. Patrick Street, from February to July of 2024, 36,000 tickets. From January to July of 2025, because in January last year, they didn't have a speed camera, it was down to 22,000. So from 36 to 22. Cedar View Roads between Follow Field Roads, 10,000 to 7. Walkley Roads between Halifax Drive and Harding Avenue, 19,000 to 11,000. And there's a bunch of other ones from 8 to 7, 13 to 6, 7 to 5, 7 to 6, 7 to 5, 8 to 5. That's just a 1 year difference. That means they're working. People are slowing down. Less tickets being given out. So this idea that Doug Ford said, oh, if they were working, the amount of tickets would disappear. First of all, it just doesn't disappear in 1 year, okay? But it is reducing, therefore it's going in the right direction, meaning they are working. People are slowing down. And one other point he was bringing up, Doug Ford has made this point multiple times, where he states that the province has 444 municipalities. And out of that 444, 37 of them use these automated speed cameras. And he says, well, if they weren't a tax grab, if they were actually working, they would all be using them. On that face alone statement, yeah, you could make that argument, but it's full of holes. Again, with all his statements on this are full of holes. It's just based on low IQ logic. I'm sorry, that's low IQ. Oh, why wouldn't everybody using it? Because there's many factors. 37 of these municipalities are probably huge municipalities with 100,000 and above. Again, I'm assuming on the number, okay, without actually going to each one and seeing the population. Now, there's 440 municipalities in all of Ontario. They might not all have issues with speeding, and I mean issues with speeding that's causing a concern for the residents of those municipalities. Or the current stop measures they have are working sufficiently for the budgets that they have. Because at the end of the day, guys, these cameras aren't cheap, okay? So these municipalities, and you've heard stories where some of them are going broke for just doing the bare minimum of staying afloat. So a lot of them would love to have these speed cameras, but they can't afford it. So they're using other measures. That doesn't mean that they think it doesn't work. Has he gone to all of these 444? Has he put them to the question, if you have the ability to use these speed cameras, would you? He's just assuming that the number of municipalities that are actually using it is low. Therefore, it is only for tax grab and they don't actually work. Low IQ. I don't know what else to say on that one. So I need people, I would like people to really think about what him and those other three mayors are saying and how they're saying it. And this goes with anything when you make a statement or a claim. You can't just say this is what it is. You make the claim, you make the statement, but then you have to back it up. Like everybody else who's for the speed cameras. They're also saying this is going to work, this has worked, and they're backing it up with evidence. So you got one side that says they don't work with no evidence, and then you got another side that says they do work with evidence. I'm sorry, that's not equal. That's not equal. It's not equal. You got to be careful of how people come with arguments. And especially this one, where actual people's lives, children's lives, and I'm not being hyperbolic, but actual children's lives are at stake here. If he truly believed speed cameras did not work and were a tax grab, again, legislation. He can legislate that. He can legislate can't give speed tickets under certain kilometers. Like I said, the international standard is 10% plus 2. You can legislate that the income or from the fines that they're bringing in can only be used for street safety. And you can legislate where you can only use a speed camera when you have other means in place as well. Speed bumps, curb extensions, turnabouts, roundabouts, which make no sense whatsoever in terms of speed. But as long as you have that in the area, you can use a speed camera and or flashing lights, indicators, and whatnot. And at the same time, too, stated in legislation that you have to warn them weeks before, which they do now, but you can make it a rule. And you have to warn them, people coming into a speed camera zone. Again, what they do. And if you don't like the signs, legislate the size of the sign, that they have to have lights on them, that they have to be so big, that they have to be so far from the speed camera area, and so on and so forth. You can fix the issue without getting rid of it. And then the ones who still speed, they deserve those tickets. And you can eliminate all those residents that it was a mistake. But being Doug Ford, stubborn as a bull, doesn't want to listen to anybody, because like he always makes that comparison. My doctor looks at me and tells me I need to lose weight, and I'm saying he just, he's doing his job, but I'm not going to listen to it anyways. Dumbest comparison ever. But it just shows who he is, that he won't be listening to the professionals and people actually know what they're talking about. So anyways, in the comments, please let me know what you think. Again, I'm going to state this one more time. If you support Doug Ford, tell me why he's right. Don't just state that he has my support and it's a tax grab. Explain your arguments. And for the ones who are in the camp as me, where this is such a stupid idea, how are you going to let Doug Ford know that he's wrong? Are you going to remember this when he is up for re-election? Anyways, guys, take care. We'll talk later.